My name is Russ Tanner. I never intended on being on talk shows or getting involved in chemtrails, but I am here doing these things because in 2005 I lived in Jamestown, New York, and I've always watched the sky, and my home office had a nice view of the sky, and I saw the jets crisscrossing. And about half an hour, 20 minutes after they would crisscross the sky and cover the sky, about 20, 30 minutes after they started, I started smelling and tasting metal in the air, and my sinuses would swell up, and I would have heart and muscle and joint pain, and I would have all kinds of symptoms that are identical to mercury poisoning, which I used to have back in 2000, and I got rid of that. I have my fillings taken out, and I was perfectly healthy for 5 years before that. So in 2005 I discovered chemtrails, and they ruined my life. 3 years of chemtrails in Jamestown forced me to leave. I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to move here to Maine, where it wasn't being sprayed quite as badly, although it has gotten worse. It's gotten quite a bit worse. And so I am the president of a small business that actually publishes natural health information, particularly scientific research on herbs and natural supplements. We actually publish information from medical journals and from highly esteemed sources to help teach people about herbs. And I also do computer programming, and I am the founder of the global skywatch.com website, which is trying to raise awareness about chemtrails. So that's my background and my relationship to chemtrails. Well, I'd like to cover a lot of material today, if possible. Don't want to go as long as I went before, but there's so much that I would love to share with people, because I'm in a unique position, plus I've been through a lot, and I've researched government corruption and conspiracy since really the 80s. The mid-80s, I think, is when I got started, because I wanted to do something for my country, and I joined a political party, and it was a small political party that was constitution-based, and I found myself right in the center of the information warehouse, or office, I should say, where all the information was coming through. And I learned, I had a pretty standard worldview like most people did, and I started realizing that the mainstream media was not telling us the truth about things. Now, some of this material I cover up front, some of your audience is going to be very familiar with, but I want to get deeper in just a few minutes. So just bear with me, because I realize that there may be some new people on the line, and I would love to help these people, to the people who are skeptical that chemtrails exist, or who don't know how to look at, or are confused or skeptical of all the people, if they have friends on Facebook who are posting information about Masons and conspiracies and the Olympics and all of this stuff, and you really don't understand what this stuff is all about. I'd like to try to help put the pieces together for people in a very easy to understand way. Being that I've really researched this stuff in my spare time, I'm not a full-time researcher, but in my spare time since the mid-'80s, I have read a lot, watched a lot, I've put pieces together, and have learned that one of the most important things I learned was that mainstream media is not being honest with us. And I also learned that mainstream media is very, very coordinated in the lies that they tell. And for people who just have a hard time believing that that could ever happen, I just want to assure you that not only can it happen, it is happening. And in the age of technology like today, where you can easily connect with people and give them information, it's not difficult to think of a scenario of how you can connect the writers and the editors together in such a way that they will be spinning the stories just the way that they want to. Some of the examples of what I saw early on, and it took me 2 years to fully accept this, but early on, one of the things that convinced me was this. Besides the fact that I was working in this political party, and one of the most common things, let me just tell you, one of the most common things that would happen is there might be demonstrations for one thing or another out in a public park or something, and police would say, oh, there's 10,000 people there, or there's 5,000 people there, and we would get all the official information. And what we would get back from the media is that there was 1,500 people there, or there was 2,000 people there, and nothing really happened, and they're just a bunch of disgruntled people who are who really don't understand the world. And so they really downplayed these events and belittled the things that we were doing. And so I saw that happen all the time for over this 2-year period, and it caused a lot of stress in me, because I saw the lies. I saw the lies happen over and over again, and I saw how they kept belittling people who were trying to stand up for the Constitution, stand up for gun rights, stand up for basic human rights, and they would always downplay the power and the numbers that we actually had. And they would use they were very good at making it sound like that we didn't know what we were talking about, and you know, people who were true patriots are just people who have no intelligence. And this is the kind of thing that they would spin. Well, 2 years later, after that, I finally I had a big epiphany. And what happened to me is we had a small group of people who were studying what had happened in Waco, Texas, because in Waco there was a big fire and all these people died, and all the information that was coming from the government was not adding up with the people who were there, or phone calls that got out. And so we had a teaching tape from David Koresh, and we kind of wanted to say, okay, who is this guy and what is he into? What is he all about? And in that teaching tape, this was actually a videotape, he was teaching people from the Bible, which I'm familiar with. All right, so what happened with me is that I had we had one of these teaching tapes, and in this teaching tape, David Koresh was actually saying, he said, if I could move mountains, if I could, you know, open the clouds in the sky, if I could do this, that, then I am God. And I was familiar with that tape because we had watched it, and we were trying to understand who this guy was, because he was really demonized in the media, and we're like, well, we're skeptical of the media, so let's just see what it really is. On CNN, they played a little piece of that clip, but they didn't play all of the other stuff. They just played the little clip where he said, I am God. And the newscaster right before said, this man believes he's Jesus Christ. He's, you know, and they were inferring that he was crazy and he believed he was Christ. And then they would play that little clip, I am God. And that was the moment, I'll never forget it. I get goosebumps just talking about it, where I said, for 2 years I had resisted believing that it was as corrupt and as blatant, and maybe it was me, maybe I was misunderstanding something, maybe, how could this be, how could this be? And finally at that moment I said, okay, there is no way that they can misunderstand that he was saying he's not God because he's not able to do these things, but yet they played that clip and they turned it completely around, and they're demonizing this guy for whatever reason. And that was the big pinnacle in my life, when I, you know, really finally accepted that the mainstream media was deliberately spinning stories. After that, I had as I started looking around and being in the alternative health industry, I saw that websites like quackwatch.com, I track them even to this day, because there's a report called the Bolin Report, where Tim Bolin actually writes a newsletter and tracks the corruption, what they're doing, because they've been in court forever. And I saw this thing where an article about amalgam fillings, and in 2000 I completely recovered from amalgam fillings, from mercury toxicity from amalgam fillings. I had all my amalgams removed, and my life changed overnight. 17 physical illnesses vanished, plus depression, horrible short-term memory. I couldn't remember names, dates, and places. My memory turned around to like a computer. It was incredible how good my memory was. People could tell me a phone number and I'll just memorize it. Well, much better than that even, but that was just an example of something I could never even dream of doing. Anyway, so after I started learning a lot about mercury and how to recover and how to detox mercury, I did a lot of research on mercury and realized some amazing things about mercury and how widespread mercury poisoning is. But I came across in my research the Quackwatch website, and I found an article on the Quackwatch website where they quoted from a book from Hal Huggins, Dr. Hal Huggins, who was trying to expose the fact that there was mercury in amalgam fillings, and he was trying to wake people up. And they actually quoted the book, but again, they edited it, and they didn't tell the rest of the story. And they made it look like Hal Huggins was completely contradicting himself, when really the Quackwatch website was lying about what he was saying. And so I could go on and on and on, but there's just so many lies in mainstream media. All right, so let me delve in a little bit deeper. I have some notes that I want to take a look at, so if you see my face turning away from the screen, I want to talk a little bit about history before we talk about the future. Because I want to say this, is that in all of the research that we've done, it's amazing the things that I've come across and the things that I've learned and the pieces that my business partner and I have put together that have completely opened our minds to understand the big picture. And let me tell you something, everyone who's listening, when you understand the big picture, when you really have it, everything makes sense. Now, there are people today, I know friends and relatives, who watch the news, and some things just don't make sense. You see, and much of this not making sense, much of the stuff that doesn't make sense is written off as stupidity. Like the government loves to advertise itself as being stupid. Like, oh, well, we made a mistake. We didn't do anything about amalgam fillings. It was just a mistake. It was a medical error. Or we didn't know that there was this contaminant in this vaccine, or we just ignored it for 30 or 40 or 50 years, and we didn't really do anything about it because it was so much red tape and nobody really looked at it. And none of this is true. When you really get down to the bottom of it, you realize that that there's a purpose behind all of this, and they don't mind if you think that they're stupid or they're just a big mindless bureaucracy, because they laugh all the way to the bank. Because with every child who gets a vaccine with mercury and aluminum adjuvants and comes down with arthritis 20 years later and starts going on anti-inflammatories and other arthritis medication, eventually makes, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars for the pharmaceutical industry, because then they get cancer and then they get other diseases that actually may have originated with these toxins. They don't care if you think, if the public thinks that the government's stupid, because the pharmaceutical industry, who actually runs the industries, who actually runs the regulatory agencies, the pharmaceutical companies are making out like bandits. They're creating a problem, and they're profiting from the solution. And this is a business model that's called Machiavellianism. It's creating a problem, and then you profit from the solution. We've seen government do this a lot. For instance, Clinton sold the idea of the NAFTA and GATT treaty, especially GATT, to the American public and said it's going to be great for consumers because these free trade treaties are going to drop the prices of consumer goods. Isn't that great? The problem is these treaties let other nations who have virtually no, who pay their workers virtually nothing, let them import their goods into the United States with no tariffs. And what happens then is many things that they're doing is many of these heavy metals, especially mercury, is an immune suppressant. So is barium. So it chronically suppresses the immune system. And mercury has shown to not only does it chronically suppress the immune system, but it causes over 200 other diseases. And what happens when your immune system is chronically suppressed? You may get acne. You may get these dormant viruses or these other conditions that pop up. You can even get an ulcer. When I had my amalgam fillings, and I had a horrible bleeding duodenal ulcer that was incredibly painful. I mean, talk about pain. I finally got over it very slowly over time with a lot of work. But guess what? When I would eat certain foods, it would act up and it would be bad, so I had to be very careful. But as soon as my amalgam fillings came out, it didn't matter what I ate. I could eat anything. And why is that? Because when your immune system is chronically suppressed, the viruses can, a lot of people think the ulcers are Helicobacter, very common, virus or bacteria that can occur when your immune system. Mercury suppresses secretory A, which is one of the first lines of defense in your gut. So, our teenagers get amalgam filling put in, and then their hormones go out of whack. They start acting hyper, mean, unhappy. They have rage. They get acne. They sleep until 11. They get lazy, and then the medical community says, "Oh, it's just hormones from growing up." I don't believe that for a second. It's because you just interrupted their entire endocrine system, their hormonal exchange system, their digestive system, their nervous system, their immune system, every other system in the body, because now they're breathing in mercury vapor 24/7, and we're blaming it on other things. So absolutely, I think that spraying chemtrails, when you expose people to chronic heavy metals, they have chronic immune suppression, then you're going to have all kinds of different diseases that come, that manifest out of that. So people definitely need to know that. So if there's anybody in the chat room who wants to ask questions, or I know Rebecca, I don't know if Rebecca can hear us, if she has questions or anything she wants to talk about. I'm open to go wherever anyone wants to go for a few minutes, and then I'll probably have to run.
Okay, I have Roxy Lopez on Skype here, but she doesn't have time. I will put her Skype just that you can see her, and she say hello to everybody, and I will write it also right now. I will say hello right now. Okay, so Roxy, hello from Mexico, hello from the world, from the live stream. Yeah, if you have things to do and you don't have time, don't worry, we have another day to get online, but Roxy is there, so she just say hello. So Roxy, also hello. Okay.
Okay, here's how it works. I felt like recording what I'm about to say, because I have literally spoken and said it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times on the phone to so many people. But mercury detox, this is true of some other metals too, but mercury detox is all about sulfur. Some people say, oh, they recommend chlorella for mercury detox. Well, what is chlorella? Chlorella is a rich source of sulfur. That's why it smells so bad. What happens with mercury is that mercury binds very strongly to sulfur. And the sulfur will, when it binds to the mercury, will carry out through the liver, be cleaned by the liver, through the bile ducts and dumped into the intestines, and then you'll eliminate it. Some of the mercury may be redistributed when it's dumped into the intestines, though, because your intestines love to reabsorb it. Plus, the mercury-sulfur bonds may break, and so some of that mercury may be freed up and may be redistributed in the body, and this is called redistribution. So when you're taking sulfur, you usually will initially feel worse for a while, and because some of that, you're stirring up a lot of sulfur, you're pulling it, or the mercury, you're pulling the mercury out of the body tissue and eliminating it through the liver. Some of it's getting redistributed in the blood. Some of it will get redistributed in the intestines. Now, one way that you can eliminate the redistribution in the intestines is you can take a product called algin. Algin. Algin is a polysaccharide. It's an derivative of brown seaweed, and it binds very strongly to heavy metals, including barium. Algin is great for barium. It's great for mercury. It binds to strontium and other heavy metals. So algin is a very good thing. In fact, I consider it the single most important supplement if you're going through a heavy metal detox. You can get algin, spelling, I'm looking at the chat. Algin is A-L-G-I-N. And you can, my favorite source is from Nature's Sunshine, and if I'll give my website here in case anybody wants to help support our efforts. You can buy from us. It's onlythebestherbs.com, onlythebestherbs.com, and just look up algin. And even though it might not, I don't know if our write-up actually mentions mercury specifically, but it's actually renowned for mercury. And you'll also see barium and strontium will be mentioned in the write-up. So, and I'll talk about milk thistle in a second too. I see somebody posted about that. So sulfur is critical for mercury detox, or one route you can take. Another route, if you want to go, well, other sources of sulfur too. You get high sulfur foods like onions and garlic, broccoli, I think cauliflower, eggs. These are rich sources of sulfur. You can also take sulfur supplements. You can take chlorella. If you're going to take chlorella, you usually want to start out real careful by taking small amounts. Well, there's our website. Thank you very much for that. Take very little amounts to make sure you don't have a bad reaction, because some people have a real bad reaction to chlorella. I took it. In fact, that's how I detoxed. Also, you can take a protein powder. This is how I detoxed, and I didn't know much when I started in 2000 because I just realized it was mercury. Well, I've studied mercury now for years, and I know a whole lot about it. But what I did is I took chlorella. I would take 15 tablets, little small tiny tablets of chlorella a little while before a meal. And I also took a protein powder that contained cysteine. And cysteine is an amino acid that contains sulfur. It has it's a sulfur-bearing amino acid. So I use that, and I also exercised a lot to sweat, because sweating is a great way to get rid of mercury. Another way to get rid of mercury is you can take DMPS. Very common. DMPS is a chemical, so a lot of people don't like it. I usually don't like chemicals, but I make an exception for DMPS. I do think it's an effective and good way to detox mercury, and I know a lot of people aren't going to like that, but it's probably one of the very rare exceptions I make for chemicals, because it's a dithiol. It actually contains 2 sulfur atoms that bind to 1 mercury, so therefore it binds much more strongly, so you don't have as much problem with redistribution. The other advantage is that instead of being cleared from the blood with the liver and being thrown into the intestines where you'll get more redistribution, which is what happens with free sulfur, is DMPS is actually, or DMSA, excuse me, well, DMPS and DMSA are both cleared by the kidneys, so you don't have the redistribution problem. DMPS is very aggressive. In fact, we did that also. We had 3 sessions, my business partner and I, and she got so sick the 3rd time that we stopped doing it. It was a little bit scary, so I don't know. DMPS is only for the very strong and the brave. Something that was a little scary to us, but it certainly removed a lot of mercury, because we did do a urine test and we found out that it did take a lot of the mercury out. I see on the chat room saunas. Sweating is a very effective way, so you can get an infrared sauna and use that. That's great. Someone mentioned milk thistle earlier. Milk thistle is a liver cleanser, which is excellent for clearing toxins out of the liver. You can have a very bad reaction at first, so start out with very small amounts. I would take a capsule. Again, you can get milk thistle from Only the Best Herbs if you want to support our efforts. Break the capsule open and just take small amounts. Take about 1/4 of the amount in the capsule, and make sure you don't have a bad reaction, because when you're dumping those toxins from your liver, you can get angry, you can feel bad and depressed. So you want to do it slowly. Make sure you can handle that milk thistle. But milk thistle is great. The other thing that people talk a lot about is cilantro. Cilantro has a lot of misconceptions. Cilantro actually is what we call an expellant. It's not necessarily a chelator like DMSA, DMPS, or sulfur are, where it binds to mercury. Cilantro actually is what we call an expellant, which causes the central nervous system to actually expel mercury. The problem is that once that mercury is expelled, you need something to sop it up. So if you're usually we will suggest taking cilantro about halfway through a mercury detox. So take it later on in your detox program when you've already when you're already on your way, so that it can start getting rid of those other deposits of mercury. So you always want to take a chelator like sulfur or DMPS or DMSA, which Dr. Cutler recommends oral DMSA. When you're taking cilantro, I would not take it alone. Somebody else mentioned MSM. That's a good question, because MSM is a sulfur molecule, but we don't know if it actually gets to the right places to take mercury out. We haven't found research on that, so it may be effective, it may not be. We really don't know how it reacts with mercury in terms of actually detoxing. Algin, very, very important. Vitamin C and vitamin E are very important during a detox to protect you. Vitamin C protects your body from the oxidative damage of mercury. Usually we suggest between 3,000 milligrams a day, spread out throughout the day. It's good to spread vitamin C out. Between 3,000 and 10,000 milligrams, depending on your body weight. Vitamin E, 400 to 800 IUs, which are international units. Preferably take your vitamin E with selenium. If you go to onlythebestherbs.com, truly the best vitamin E we've ever found anywhere is made by Nature's Sunshine, and we sell it there. Some vitamin E is useless because it's the wrong type of molecule. And our vitamin E has selenium in it too, so it's very good, because mercury actually binds to selenium, iodine, zinc, interferes with magnesium. Did I cover them all? There's others. But so selenium supplementation during mercury detox is good, because you don't want selenium to get too low, because that could be a threat to your heart. Zinc binds to mercury. In fact, zinc powder is often used in mercury cleanup, when they're doing remediation for mercury cleanup. So zinc is another mineral you might want to supplement a little bit. You don't want to supplement too much zinc, because it'll counterindicate with copper, or lower your copper levels. What I do for zinc, honestly, is I eat pumpkin seeds, raw organic pumpkin seeds for my zinc. See, I'm not much of a salesman, am I? It's not about selling stuff for me. It's really just about helping people. We don't, it's just about getting people better, and everything else will take care of itself, So I eat pumpkin seeds for zinc, and then for copper, I offset it with a little copper, which I don't take at the same time. I'll have some copper the next day, and the copper that I take is in the source of a drink. Let me look it up real quick and make sure I get the name right. It's chlorella. Not chlorella. Oh my goodness, what is it called? Oh, chlorophyll. It's liquid chlorophyll, which is it's got a mint flavor to it. On Only the Best Herbs, I actually will put like 3 to 5 squirts in a cup of water with some ice, and it tastes very good. It has a minty tea flavor. It's very good for you, and helps to offset any, if you have too much zinc in your system, you don't want your copper to get too low. So it kind of helps balance that out. Let me see some other things people were asking about. What is the best method to test for heavy metal toxicity? Let me make sure I covered everything about mercury. So we have cilantro, algin, vitamin C and E, very important. We covered DMSA, DMPS, free sulfur, foods you can get free sulfur from, how to do the cilantro, chlorella. There's so much you could go into, but those are really the primary things to know about. if you go, I wrote up a one-year suggested detox plan. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't prescribe anything, and I don't treat, cure, or diagnose anything. But if you go to orbisvitae.com and you go into the forum, it's ORBIS, Orbis, like orbit, Vitae, VITAE.com, and you go into the forum, there's a mercury forum, a mercury amalgam forum there near the top, and in that forum there's a list of videos and articles, and scroll down that list and you'll see, well, you don't need to scroll down, it'll actually appear right there. It's called My Mercury Detox Plan. And it's a one-year plan that I wrote up that incorporates many different things, including the cilantro, but not at the very beginning. It's a DMSA-based plan, but it also incorporates a lot of other things. So it kind of builds upon the Dr. Cutler's protocol with DMSA, with oral DMSA, but then I extend it into other supplements and foods that will help all of that. So again, orbisvitae.com, orbisvitae.com, go into the forum, into the Mercury forum, and you'll see the article on detoxing there. Plus you'll see an article further down called Everything I Know About Mercury, which has a lot of information, a comprehensive list of diseases that mercury causes. And I hope everybody gets familiar with that kind of stuff, because mercury, I believe, is the single largest cause of disease. I don't think there's a larger cause of disease in the world today. And people are beginning to realize this. They're beginning to realize about their fillings, their vaccines, their tattoos, their dentures, their lipstick, the other things that may have mercury, the tuna fish, are causing their problems. And again, I'm not saying it affects everybody equally, but it does affect a lot of people. There's a question on here about what is the best test for heavy metal toxicity. According to Dr. Hal Huggins, the best test for mercury toxicity is called a urine porphyrin test. What happens when your mercury toxin, there are these things in your blood called porphyrins, which they can't bind properly, so they spill over in your blood, and you'll actually get rid of them out of your urine. So you see your porphyrin levels in your urine rise. And according to Dr. Huggins, that's the safest and least invasive way to test for mercury toxicity. You can also do, and you have to do this cautiously, I don't always recommend it, but there's a thing that doctors generally don't know about the urine porphyrin test, or it's actually been discredited to them, so they'll look down on it. So it might be hard to get a urine porphyrin test. Another test is was called a chelation challenge test. This is where they'll give you DMPS or DMSA, either in an IV or oral, and what that'll do is those are both sulfur molecules, so go around your body and they'll sop up, they'll actually grab mercury molecules, and then they collect your urine for 24 hours and see how much mercury is in your urine. And that is a fairly effective way to test for mercury. The problem with it is it can be dangerous. I've actually spoken to a few people who've been damaged by it, who called me. Actually, one of them was a nurse who it was recommended by her doctor, apparently, and she was damaged by that test. So if you're not strong and you feel like you might be really mercury toxic, the challenge test may be dangerous for you, so you've got to be careful. The upside to the challenge test is that doctors are generally familiar with it, so it's not hard to get it done. Whereas the urine porphyrin test is very difficult to find a doctor that will do it, prescribe it, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for posting all the, somebody's posting all the links there, that's great. Let's see. Do you have an article written about how to detox? Yes, that's on that might have been posted there. Orbisvitae.com in the Mercury forum. There's 2 articles. The Dr. Cutler protocol is listed in our Mercury forum on orbisvitae.com. And right below it, I have my detox protocol, which is a 1-year plan. Month by month, you increase the intensity of your detox, so you can kind of handle it. Another question on the forum is here, do you know what labs do porphyrin tests? I don't. I have heard of one. Somebody contacted me a few months ago and had one, and I don't know if I kept the information. But if you want to find one, you can contact me on Facebook. Join the Chemtrails Global Skywatch. It's 3 words, Chemtrails Global Skywatch Facebook group. I am the admin. You can message me, join the group and message me. You'll find me on there, and I'll help you search for someone or somewhere where you can get that test. Someone also asked about hair tests. Hair tests are controversial. I'll tell you why. Hair tests are very good for many things. They're very good for metal toxicities of other types. Here's the problem with mercury, though. Mercury does not stay in your blood very long. Your body will get, if you have a big dose of mercury, usually your body will clear that mercury out of your blood in 15 to 45 minutes. So blood tests for mercury poisoning are generally considered useless, and unfortunately most doctors do not know that. I cannot tell you how many hundreds of people who've called me and I've spoken with who had a test 5 years earlier, a blood test that their doctor prescribed, and it showed low mercury levels, and so they ruled that out and spent 5 years looking for a cause of their disease, and then finally 5 years later they came back to mercury and realized that they really did have mercury problems. It's just that the blood test was useless. Now, the reason I mention this is because a hair test is like a time-weighted average. It's kind of like a core sample for your blood. If there's something in your blood for a long time, it's going to show up in your hair. So it's kind of like a hair test is like a time-weighted averaged blood test. So hair tests, if you get chronic, frequent exposures to mercury, then hair tests can reveal mercury, whereas the blood test in that particular situation may not. If your exposure is chronic low level, it may not show it, though. So if you're a frequent fish eater, and let me tell you something, fish, the fish that we actually tested fish with a meter, and there was heavy mercury vapor coming off. Once you open a can of tuna, actually we opened several cans of tuna in just maybe 4 or 5 in a kitchen, and the mercury level in the kitchen went from 0 to 38, if I remember right. It's in the 30s or 40s micrograms per cubic meter of mercury just from opening the fish. It's astonishing footage, and I really hope one day to get it published, but people need to, if somebody has access, go rent a mercury meter, take video footage of this and put it online, and I think it'll go viral because it's astonishing the amount of mercury vapor that comes off these cans. But anyway, so talking about the blood test, let me look at whatever questions. If we have some other questions too. Commercial again. Yeah, so anyway, the other thing I'd love to mention about mercury is compact fluorescent light bulbs. Please go to the Orbis Vitae website and go to the forum and go to the top, look at the top left of the page, and there's a video link there called How Much Mercury Does a Broken CFL Bulb Emit? We conducted a test where we broke fluorescent light bulbs. We broke the tube tines, we broke the low mercury tubes, fluorescent tubes, we broke CFL, the twisty, turny, fluorescent type bulbs, and we broke an incandescent bulb inside plastic bags, and we measured the mercury coming off the different bulbs. And that's what that video is. It shows the mercury coming off the bulbs after they're broken. And we also discovered during our research that the state of Maine did a pretty comprehensive test where they took a mid-sized room and they broke CFL bulbs, and then they took mercury readings at different levels in the room over different periods of time. And I'll give you the summary of the test. And this is absolutely shocking, is that, and this is from the state of Maine, this is not me saying this, but we confirmed it with our test, the amount of mercury coming off of the site of a broken CFL bulb after it's been cleaned up according to the EPA's instructions can exceed 50 micrograms per cubic meter. And in some cases, they said it can exceed 100. 50 micrograms, and this is coming right off the area, so eventually this dissipates into the room, And they said it's especially bad if the windows in the room are closed. If the windows in the room are open, then of course you're getting fresh chemtrail air, you know, in your room. But at least the mercury doesn't build up so much. But if the room has closed windows, they had mercury levels going up to and exceeding 50 micrograms per cubic meter. How much is that? Well, let me tell you. The EPA, that is the maximum level. I mean, the EPA can shut down a factory, if I have my facts right. There's the the American Standard, gosh, I forget the acronym all the time, but the AS, one of the organizations say the limit is 0.3 micrograms, one says 25, and I believe the EPA goes with 50, I believe, or maybe it's the AS, the other organization. I can't remember. It's all in the video, though. But 50 micrograms is considered a dangerous, disease-causing amount of mercury. Break a light bulb in your living room, clean it up according to EPA instructions, and it can cause diseases if it's not remediated by a professional company. In fact, in Maine, there was a an article written that became very famous where a woman broke a CFL bulb and in her house ended up having to pay $2,000 to have it cleaned up properly to get the mercury levels back down to safe levels. You know, you may want to, the CFL bulbs, in my opinion, are just another way to expose people to mercury. Mercury has been the poison of the elites for a long time, and they systematically have stopped teaching doctors how to properly diagnose it, and they teach them blood tests, which according to the leading researchers and doctors is useless. You know, your general doctor will not know that, though, because they don't teach it in the medical schools, and I believe this is absolutely intentional. So they get mercury into people through CFL bulbs now, and in addition to the other ways like amalgam fillings and vaccines, which some vaccines still have mercury in them, by the way. They promote getting tattoos on television, and some of those tattoo inks, I'm not saying all of them, but some of them, you have to check, some of them are made with heavy metals. Like you've ever heard of cobalt blue. Well, that has cobalt in it. You know, that's why it's called cobalt blue. Red inks are often made with cinnabar. Cinnabar is the red ore of mercury. It's red. They use it for red coloring, so you might find it in some red tattoo inks. Apparently, it used to be in some lipsticks and makeup, some of the red colors or blush-colored makeups. Dentures. All right, you have this thing called sundowning where you have seniors who get dentures. They have rapid decline, but they feel better in the morning. And as the day goes on, they feel worse and worse. Well, guess what? They take their dentures out at night, their mercury levels drop overnight, and they come back in the morning. They put their dentures in, and throughout the day they decline, their memory gets worse, and they start fading into dementia. This is called sundowning. And my theory is that it's clearly a mercury exposure because the symptoms, including deafness, because when you have ringing in the ears, you have mercury acting like an excitotoxin, which is stimulating the cells that pick up the vibrations of the hairs in your ears that pick up the vibrations and convert it into sound. Those are being overstimulated by, I believe, mercury. It's clear to me that mercury causes that because I had it really progressively worse. And when my amalgam fillings came out in 2000, the ring in the ears was gone that evening and did not come back for 5 years. 100% silence from screaming day after day after day after day. It came back in 2005 when they started spraying chemtrails in the town I lived in Jamestown, New York. That's called tinnitus. Anyway, so the red coloring in dentures, I believe killing those ear cells, and those frequencies you're not going to hear again. Once that cell dies, that's one less frequency you're going to be able to hear. And as more and more of those cells die, you go deaf. So why do all these seniors have hearing loss? I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe, diagnose, treat, or cure, but I believe it's because of mercury poisoning, probably from dentures. Where are they going? Let me see if there's other questions here. Where are they going with this spraying? Are we getting close to the end? What does the future hold? Oh, big questions. big subjects. I tell you, I wish I had, as you know, I can talk for hours straight. I've often joked about that, and Hans actually lets me do it, so I get away with it here. Where are they going with the spraying? Here's what I believe is going on with the spraying. It's the same thing where they're causing a problem, and then they're going to cite the solution. Brookhaven Laboratories has developed a cure for mercury-intoxicated soils. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to intoxicate the soils with mercury levels, and then they're going to charge the U.S. government through contractors. The U.S. government will hire contractors at hundreds of million-dollar contracts to insert sulfur-impregnated rods into the ground. This method was developed just a few years ago by Brookhaven Labs. They will put these sulfur-impregnated rods into the ground to absorb the mercury out of the ground. And what I think will happen is it's going to be these military contractors, which are owned and controlled by the elites. This money goes to, many of the elite families, going to make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars off of this mercury poisoning. They also are making people sick. I had a heart attack last year that I have absolutely no doubt in my mind was caused by mercury. By chemtrails. My heart hurts. The harder they spray, the more my heart hurts, and I know the intensity because I can taste and smell it, and it's a 100% correlation. It never fails. When I start smelling the chemtrails and tasting it, I know within 30 seconds I'm going to start feeling that pain, and how hard that pain strikes me is directly proportional to how hard they're spraying. So they're making people sick. The pharmaceutical industry, which is virtually controlled by the Rockefeller family, so is oil, is profiting hugely. In fact, when I was in the hospital having my heart attack, my nurse, who I actually had a urine sample that can only sit for 45 minutes and then they can't use it anymore because it invalidates the sample, had it ready, and the nurse said, I'll be right back to get it, was gone until something like 5 or 7 in the morning. I think it was 5:30 in the morning. He showed up as a male nurse on that particular shift. And I called twice, and I talked to the desk through the intercom, and they said, we'll see what we can do. He came back and apologized. I had to redo the test because he said that night, he said, I don't know what happened, but everybody's sick tonight. I said that there's heart problems are going on the other floor, respiratory issues, people can't breathe, and it happens all at the same time. He said, I don't know what's going on. That night, they sprayed us so hard while I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital from Monday night to Thursday afternoon. That night, they sprayed us so hard, I had asked my friend to bring my mask, which is right here. This is my wet mask, in case you can see the video. I don't know if you see video right now. I had to wear it that night because they sprayed the heck out of Bangor. That night was the night that all those people were having heart issues and breathing issues, so much so that my nurse couldn't even come and take my sample. And so there's all these people, just because they cannot taste and they cannot smell the chemtrails in the air, they're not ever able to put this together. But to me, I can see that when I'm out in public, when it's heavy spraying, people are coughing, children are whiny and ornery, adults are short-tempered, people drive aggressively, all of this stuff. When it's mild, it's a completely different atmosphere. And it's just as plain as day, and it's been like this for 7 years that I put up with this and witnessed this. So it's very clear to me. Have a question on the chat about zeolite. Zeolite is an aluminum-based molecule that binds to mercury. Mercury and aluminum actually bind, and if you get a free aluminum actually makes mercury 100 times more toxic, according to Dr. Haley, which I consider one of the world's foremost experts on mercury. He's a brilliant scientist who has done a lot of things in his life, and he's someone that everybody needs to listen to. He's made several videos about mercury toxicity and autism and other things. Anyway, I see that there's no video. Sorry about that. Well, maybe I can show you a picture of my mask here one time. But anyway, he talks about aluminum. And this is why
the aluminum adjuvants, which are supposed to stimulate the immune system that are in vaccines, are so dangerous because the aluminum and mercury are mixed together. And aluminum and mercury are very reactive with each other. In fact, you're not supposed to bring mercury onto a jet because it can eat through the aluminum. If you ever go on YouTube, aluminum metal, and it just it does very strange things. It just deteriorates the aluminum in a very wild way. So getting back to zeolite, zeolite actually binds, because it's aluminum based, it binds to the mercury. In the studies that I've seen say that it binds very, very tightly and allows you to eliminate it without redistribution, which is a good thing. On the plus side, the studies have seemed really good, and I've heard a lot of positive feedback from people who've used it. So it may very well be good. The only downside I see is not crazy about putting aluminum into the body, but you know, that's and the studies that I've seen have been all financed by the industry that sells the zeolite. So we kind of knock a few points off the credibility when we see self-financed studies, because they could be tainted, but they may not be. So have had positive feedback from people, though. I've heard a lot of positive feedback about zeolite, so it may very well be a good thing to use. I haven't used it myself. I'm just not crazy about the idea of using aluminum. I think there are other things you can use. But until I see some independent studies, I personally don't use it, but it may be a very good thing. So I can't really, come to a solid conclusion about it, honestly. One of the questions before, actually there's a question back here. Let me see what, heavy spraying Rhode Island, why do they cover the entire sky even when the wind is blowing? I think they cover the entire sky for several reasons. I think one reason is when you eliminate sunlight reaching the ground, your plants grow slower. It messes up your agriculture. I think they also cover the entire sky because then they spray real heavy above the sky. So I've seen this happen a lot here, where they'll cover the whole sky, and I can smell the intensity. It'll be at like what I call 20 to 30% intensity. And then after the sky is covered, an hour later, it goes to 50, 60, 70%. And once in a while, if I see a crack between the clouds, you'll see big plumes up above the cloud layer. So I think that might be another reason they cover the sky entirely. Those are probably the primary reasons. There may be other reasons too. I think they're also altering the weather. You'll see the paper came out, and I wrote some things about this on our Chemtrails Global Skywatch Facebook group several times, that the Air Force, I believe it was, came out with an article called Controlling the Weather by 2025, I think it was. And to me, this is an absolute joke. People, this is what I talk about using your left brain. Why would the government reveal secret technologies that they're developing that are going to be used in warfare, which is what the document itself claims? Why would they do that? They wouldn't do that. They absolutely would not do that. So why do they come out and publish this paper and make it freely available on their website about controlling the weather by 2025? For the exact same reason that they say they're going to spray chemtrails. This is why the movie What in the World Are They Spraying is so effective in one respect, is because they expose the fact that the government is saying, we're going to spray it sometime in the future, we're going to spray, we're exploring this, we're going to spray, but they're doing it right now. And this is a method of disinformation. It's a propaganda technique that tries to convince the people that they're not spraying now because they're being so honest about doing it in the future. Well, in the same respect, I think that's what they're doing with the weather. With this document that says controlling the weather by 2020, or owning the weather by 2025, is that they publish this document because it convinces the public that they're not doing it now. They say, oh, they're working on this thing, so that, they subconsciously, you automatically conclude that they're not doing it right now. And that's really the point. That's what this disinformation is all about. And don't ever underestimate how far the government will go to spread disinformation, because that is what this is all about. It is about controlling what you believe. Because if you can control what somebody believes, you can control their actions. And if you control their actions, you control their life. So they will produce reports. They will mobilize military. They will send up rockets. They will spend hundreds of millions of dollars for doing things that have no other real purpose than to disinform the public. And people really need to realize that the disinformation is a real big part of this whole thing. Now let me look down and see if there are any other questions or anything. Again, I could go on for hours, but I know we have to wrap this up pretty soon. So if there are any other questions or anybody wants to put anything in the chat box, I'll be more than happy to try to respond as intelligently as I can about it. I see somebody does not agree at all with something, but I'm not sure what that is. But that's fine. Whatever. I mean, we can talk about things like this and try to figure out what's going on. But I think yeah, I see someone talking about the book The Secret. In the beginning of the copy that I was given as a gift, it said, "As above, so below." And that is one of the trademark phrases used by the elite authors to let you know this book was written by an elite. And if I didn't know anything about the New World Order religion, but I did know some of the secret phrases, then I would have looked at that book and said, "Aha, this is propaganda." But I happen to know a whole lot about the New World Order religion, and so even looking at the book itself, it's clear to me that it's all based in this deception, which I intended to go into in more detail, but I ran out of time in this talk about what is going to happen, what are the big events that they're going to do. I did give away the gist of it. The real spoiler is that they're going to do the same thing they did in the Roman Empire and the same thing they did in Egypt, is they're going to present somebody and say, "This is God. This is the man you should follow. This is the Messiah. This is the Savior." And they have already spent many years and much money and time conditioning all of the major religions to accept that this is the Messiah. And that is the big deception that we see happening. And during that time that deception happens, knowing what I know now, because I have a big background in all of this stuff, everything they do is absolutely crystal clear that this is where this is all going. Everything that they do. And this chipping, all this business with chipping, is very critical, because one of the prophecies in Revelation chapter 13 talk about the famous number 666. And this number 666 is where everybody has heard about this in the movies and stuff, where it says you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark. And the mark will be on your right hand or forehead. You can't buy or sell. And in chapter 14 of Revelation, it says that those who receive this, that mark is a sign that you have rejected God, and that's something you don't want to do, because those people will be separated from God eternally. So we're seeing this happen right now. This is not something that's going to happen far in the future. I think they're pushing the chipping agenda very, very quickly. And it may be that the chip isn't going to be as mainstream as people think. They may fall back to a invisible tattoo that's laser imprinted, because the chip causes cancer. And so it's being largely rejected by the public. But in Mark, if it's invisible, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, the public won't think about it. It can easily be put on the back of a hand. And when you go to the grocery store, after you buy your groceries, you'll just pass your hand over it, and the groceries will be deducted from your account. Now, what is the purpose of the chip? Aaron Russo was approached by the Rockefeller family when he was running for governor in Chicago, and the Rockefeller brother told him straight up what their chip is about. Said, if they don't fall in line and do what we want to do, we're going to turn off their chip. They won't be able to buy or sell anything, so they can't oppose us. They won't have any money. How could it be any more plain? Revelation 13 actually says that. It says they will not be able to buy or sell unless they have this mark. So do not take the mark, regardless of what it costs. if you believe the warnings in the Bible, which I do after much research and much striving in my own life. In the last video I did with Hans, I gave a couple testimonies about how I've had some events happen to me that convinced me that God was not only real, but he was very, very much involved in my life. They were things that only, could have happened supernaturally. So regardless of whether people think that sounds crazy or not, I've been through it, I've experienced it firsthand, and I'm not going to be an idiot. I know a lot of people have things happen to them and they quickly forget, or they write it off and say, oh, it's this and that. It's like, no, when you get a 2x4 up across the head, you can either be an idiot and you can ignore it, and I don't mean to use that idiot derogatorily, I'm just using that as a phrase that a lot of people use. But I don't want to be unintelligent and ignore it. I want to look at it and say, wow, this was something extremely significant that just happened in my life, and I need to learn more about it. And I went on and learned more about it, and I realized that there's a lot more to life than what strikes the eye. And one of the things that while I'm on this subject, I put a post on Facebook, actually a graphic a while back. You can look through my Facebook photos under the political album, and you see this graphic I made. And it's actually a quote from Isaiah 14, verse 16 through 17. It says, it's talking about the Antichrist. This is the God-man who will say he's God, just like in Egypt, just like in ancient Rome. This is the one that will occur in our lifetime. I believe it'll happen in the next, probably 5 to 20 years. I don't know when. Again, I don't like to set timelines, but they're moving very quickly towards setting all this stuff up. But this is what this Isaiah verse is talking about. Here's what it says. It says, the man that made the earth to tremble. This is what he did. He made the earth to tremble. He did shake kingdoms. He made the world as a wilderness. He destroyed the cities thereof, and he did not open the house of his prisoners. Now, one thing, I've studied the Bible a lot in my life. One thing I understand is that the Bible is written largely in parables, and it does that for a reason, because if people really want to know, you study the parable and it becomes perfectly plain to you. But if you are, if you don't want to know and you want to ignore it, then it's not perfectly plain. But it's not difficult to figure out what this is saying. And when you look at the actual meanings of the original words, it becomes even more fascinating. It says the man that made the earth to tremble. This is one thing to do. And tremble means physically shake. Well, how can a man physically shake the earth? Well, if he has H.A.A.R.P-induced earthquakes, which is, I believe, another reason for chemtrails, because it ionizes the atmosphere, greatly increases in the conductivity of H.A.A.R.P, electromagnetic waves, you can make the earth tremble. It says it right there. Here's the God-man right there in Isaiah being prophesied about that. He did shake kingdoms. Now, the word shake means to shake as in induced fear. So he's going to cause tremendous fear in the earth. And one thing that's interesting about that is mercury is called the fear drug because it actually makes people fearful, panicky. It can induce panic attacks. Mercury is the fear drug. So by spraying mercury in chemtrails, it certainly can cause people to fear. Made the world as a wilderness. Well, if you know anything about the Rio conference in 92, 93, you know that depopulation is a very real agenda. And they intend on carrying it through, and I believe that's one of the reasons for chemtrails is also depopulation. Clearly, that's exactly what it's doing because you have all these people who are dying of aneurysm, stroke, heart attack, and cancer, the big four. So if you depopulate the world, what happens? You make the world as a wilderness. Even the Obama administration has openly talked about bulldozing cities for the sake of helping the economies. Bulldozing entire cities. That's not me saying this. That comes directly from mainstream media from the Obama administration. And destroyed the cities thereof. Well, look at what's happening to the cities. You can look at bulldozing the cities. You can think about other ways that cities can be destroyed. Or, God forbid, there's actually warfare, which I fear that there may be, I don't know, there may be bad things that happen in the United States. I certainly would never want to see anything like that in any country. It's horrible. But, and the last thing says, open not the house of his prisoners. And then it talks, in another place, it talks about how Christ, after the return of Christ, all the prisoners were released. FEMA camps. Who's going to house all these prisoners? All these prisoners. And if they're released later on, that's because they're not really guilty of a crime. Under these Obama administration mandates and executive orders that have given Obama control of all these things, it makes a whole lot of sense how this could happen. How the NDAA, the indefinite detention law that was overturned by a judge, the overturning was now just overruled, and so it's in force. So they can detain you in FEMA camps, prisons, whatever, for any length of time, for any reason whatsoever. So that's an interesting verse about that. And one other thing I'd like to share, and then I'll look at the questions again and see if there's anything else before I go, is if you look at Revelation 18:23, Revelation actually mentions the word sorcery or sorcerer at least 4 times. And in Revelation 18:23, I think, is one of the most interesting ones, because it says this. It says, "For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived." Now, I talk a lot in these talks that I have on Hans's radio program, which I'm so grateful he lets me talk and talk. He's wonderful for doing that because he cares about people, and he wants information to be free and uncensored. I talk a lot about the great deception that's coming. And the great deception is all about this man-God, this God-man, the new Messiah, the United Nations Messiah, who will come back just like in Egypt, just like in the Roman Empire. Except now we have technology, and the Bible says there will be fake signs and wonders, that this Messiah will convince the world that he's real in one way by false signs and wonders. So he will do these miraculous things, but they're all technology. In Revelation, it says, "For your merchants." This is another thing this great deception is all about this man-God that's going to appear on the scene, and everybody's going to be forced to worship this person. And if you don't, you're going to be beheaded or imprisoned. And what happens here, and so this is one of the reasons why you have to understand and know what's really going on, because it's going to get really ugly. Unfortunately, it doesn't have to get as ugly as a lot of people think. I think if people would band together and resist this in the proper ways, but I don't see that happening. Unfortunately, there's too few people involved, and the people who learn about this are not being active. A lot of people, some are, and my hats are off to those people who are very active, and I appreciate so much what they're doing. But a lot of people just aren't. They won't even put a bumper sticker on their car, and it's like it's not happening. But anyway, so let me decode what this says. It says, "For your merchants were the great men of the earth." The word merchants means wholesaler or trader, so someone who actually conducts commerce. The word great, your merchants were the great men of the earth. The word great doesn't mean good, it means very powerful. So here you're saying you're great traders, your great merchants of the earth were very powerful, and by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. This is the way that they facilitate the deception, is by sorcery. And a lot of people think the word sorcery means Mickey Mouse standing on the edge of a cliff calling lightning down from the sky. That's not what sorcery is. Sorcery is the Greek word. This is in the original language of Revelation. Well, Septuagint. It's in the Greek word. It's the word pharmakia, and it's the word that we get our word pharmaceutical from. And the actual original meaning of the word means to drug or poison. So listen to this. It could not even be any more plain. The merchants, the powerful merchants of the earth, I'm paraphrasing what this says, powerful merchants of the earth, i.e. the elites, are deceiving the nations of the world. So there's a huge deception. And they're utilizing sorcery, which means drugging and poisoning, to do it. What are chemtrails? Is this not the largest act of drugging and poisoning in human history? One of the chemtrail types I actually call the pharmaceutical type, because it actually tastes like that pharmaceutical taste, kind of like a sleeping pill taste, that bitter, it's just like it. And boy, does it have an effect on me. I'll answer some more questions. I'll probably have to go pretty quick, but let me answer. There's a couple more questions in the chat room, if that's okay. False leader is going to stop the chemtrail liquid crystal in the atmosphere. Okay, very interesting. That provokes some thoughts. I believe what will probably happen, and you're not going to hear this in many other places. If you go to Orbis Vitae website, go in the Bible forum. There's some videos in there that talk about Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam, I'm not making this up, is where you spray barium into the atmosphere. I hope you're listening to what I'm saying. I don't know how many people are listening to this, but this is incredible information. This is from the patent themselves. They spray barium particles in the atmosphere, and you can create 3D holograms if you have a light projector of the right type. This would be a great way to synthesize the return of a Christ or of a God figure, wouldn't it? I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And some of the information that has been uncovered from the military talks about using psychological operations to do just that very thing. So the atmosphere can be used. I see they mentioned in the post here about liquid crystal. I know what you mean by liquid crystal. If you energize it, liquid crystal actually can polarize light so that it looks dark. That's why when you're looking at liquid crystal display, if you look on the side, the dark numbers and letters can actually look transparent again. You have to be looking at the right angle. So they're going to try to blacken the sky, because one of the prophecies about the coming of the Messiah is going to be that the sky will be blackened. Well, let me explain this real quick and get this out of the way, is that almost everybody knows that an Antichrist comes before a Christ in Bible prophecy. So a lot of people wouldn't be fooled by that. So don't you think what they're really going to try to do is have an Antichrist, fake Antichrist first, and then a real Antichrist second, and say, oh, he's the real one. There he is. There's the real one. Before the actual coming of the real Christ. So they'll have a fake Antichrist and then a real Antichrist. That is most likely what they're going to do. And if you look at all this technology they're developing, with H.A.A.R.P, with chemtrails, with the scalar weapons, isn't it absolutely fascinating? And this, again, you're not going to hear this information in very, very many places. The public should be absolutely amazed by this. It induces earthquakes, which are in the prophecies before the coming of the Messiah. They can blacken the sky if the liquid crystal technology that was mentioned here in this post is truly being implemented in the atmosphere. With H.A.A.R.P and with another one of the, they can induce another one of the prophecies by polarizing the light over huge parts of the world, if that's indeed possible with the technology they're using to fulfill another prophecy. You probably, if you're on Facebook, have seen all the rivers and lakes and streams that are turning red. You know, of course, that's another thing, is that a lot of this water turns to blood, a lot of people die. So a lot of these horrible things, in fact, the technology that's being developed, isn't it amazing that most of it could very readily be used to fake the coming of Christ? You know, and fool Christians who don't know better as to what's really going on, which is a large portion of the population, to fake them into believing that the Antichrist is really the Christ.